Hello and welcome to the EMS Handoff podcast, your source for all things EMS. It is time for another week. We took a week off this last week. I had a lot of things that are going on, so it is just us this evening. And to use the term coined by Eric McCullough 2 weeks ago, Bradley is jumping on and off like a kid playing hopscotch. So we're going to heckle him. I think that's the term you used, Eric, right? You know, just,
that's it. Heckling.
Heckling is not bullying. We are being nice and doing it all politely. So going to have a little bit of fun. But while we do have him here for a short period of time, Bradley Dean, how are things going in North Carolina?
Unfortunately, we're seeing our numbers COVID-19 really.
Those are some great words.
All I heard was, unfortunately, COVID-19.
but it's not going to stop me. I will be in New York this weekend, and then early or in Austin, Texas.
So for those of y'all that did not understand him from the Max Headroom timeline, and y'all use that reference, but how many people now understand Max Headroom? He's going up to New York here shortly to speak at a conference. So we're going to see him, and I think he's going to take the mobile EMS Handoff studio with him to try to catch a couple of interviews while he's up there. So check that out, coming out soon. Eric McCullough, you're not Max Headroom, and me and you can have some fun giving somebody a hard time. So how are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I'm doing good. We, well, I mean, just, you know, trying to get through this COVID stuff. But other than that, this is the first time I've had a fall. This week was a fall week. I actually did a bonfire. It was awesome. I mean, because like last year it was summer and then like half a day of fall and then winter. And I don't think we've ever had a fall. So I'm actually kind of excited that maybe we'll get a fall for more than a week.
Well, if we can do the white Christmas again, just wait until we get to the right spot. But I am right there with you. Beautiful week this week. Had some good stuff and got to enjoy the weather. So before we get started today, though, we're going to go ahead and go into our podcast partners and thank them for their service and support. Primarily, we'd like to mention the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. JEMS has been a great partner to the EMS Handoff podcast since we started. Make sure and go by their website at jems.com. You can catch all of our prior episodes, as well as check out our fellow podcast hosts that are out there. I liked your point last week, Eric. We're going to have to check into those other podcasts and see see if they're repping us. But one way or another, we'll give them some support. There's some great people there. Make sure to go by and subscribe, rate, and review on their podcast platforms. They've got Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Find the EMS Today, and you'll find all of our previous episodes. In addition, you see Eric wearing the Keep Back podcast line from the Pursuit Company. I've got our original on. I can't really get it away here, but I got our original logo on today. But make sure to go by the Pursuit Company at www.thepursuitco.com. Hit shop and then find affiliates, and you'll find the EMS Handoff. You'll find all of our original gear in short sleeve, long sleeve, and hoodies. And then you'll also find the EMS Handoff Keep Back podcast line, which has been one of our most popular. They'll ship anywhere in the country. So as long as you're listening here, put it in, they'll ship it out to you. Great apparel for all sorts. So today we are going to go over the topic of the lift assist, and not really the lift assist in itself, just what all is involved. So as we take a look at this, Bradley, I think lift assist, it'd be very interesting to kind of take a look at what percentage of our call volume lift assists actually account for. And just wonder if you've by chance done that research in your area.
So I have looked at it, but I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I haven't been in the office a lot this week, but it was, I know that we run a lot of And one of the big things is, when you get there, You know, most of the time these people are not injured, and those are the ones that we really wonder, what happened? Why do they keep falling? Are they, familiar faces that we're seeing?
So this, I think the topic here is quite interesting, because a lot of times we commonly think of it just as one of a quick call that we can go on. We get the alert, we go there, we get them picked up, we get their documentation signed, and we're out of there. But I think there's a whole lot more when it comes to lift assist. So just to define what we're talking about here, it's really individuals that have fallen and are unable to get up. And as you mentioned, most of them don't have an injury, but there's a lot of things that we can get into on this. And the first thing I'm going to do is bring up, a situation that we had in our area. Well, before we even get there, so we lift the individuals up, we put them back in place. What kind of things do we need to be looking out for before we leave that scene?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things we should do, helping a fall patient back into bed, a chair, anything like that, should really launch risk mitigation in the patient's home to prevent any future falls. Because the question is, did they fall because it was a rug, a cord for a lamp behind a piece of furniture that they got their foot caught on? What caused the fall, and what risk mitigation factors can we take that's going to help the patient? It's going to reduce, the potential for future injury and reduce the chances of us having to come back out here on repeat times to pick this patient up, whether it's us or another crew.
So
yeah,
go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of that risk mitigation. That's a part of EMS we don't really talk a lot about. Like when we talk about the six pillars of EMS, and we talk about safety, scene safety, and things like that, we kind of forget about the whole, let's make sure that they're going to be safe after the fact. And I don't know about you, but when I was working EMS, working 24s, 36s, and 48s, it can be a little tiring, especially if it's 2:00 in the morning. You've already ran out to this person 4 or 5 times to just be like, oh, let's put them back in, rather than discover, okay, why is it they keep doing this? And are there resources that we have available? Or is there something we can do to help mitigate that risk, like Bradley was saying?
Well, and this is where I'm going to bring in a specific situation that we had. So we had got called out one day to a house that we had never been to before. And there was an elderly couple. The guy was 94. The lady was 93. They immaculate house. You could tell they had lived there for a while, a lot of stuff. And he was in the floor, he was actually outside and had fallen on the steps and was unable to get up. His wife was unable to help him. So they called. We went out, picked him up, made sure that he wasn't hurt. Everything looked good, took him back into the house. Within that evening, we ended up going over there 3 more times. And by the time we got to our 3rd shift that week, all 3 shifts had ended up going over there about 11 times. And so finally, when we got to our last shift and went over there, the question was, we had never been over here before in our life, or in my career. I shouldn't say my life, but in my career, we had never been to this house before. And all of a sudden, in 5 days, we had come over here 11 times. Now, obviously, this is kind of one of those outliers that it becomes such a big deal. But come to find out, that individual, or that couple, their son and his family had been the ones taking care of them, and their son had an opportunity for a large promotion in his company, which took him to Colorado, and they had just moved a few days before that, and they wanted them to leave. They didn't want to be the reason why their son couldn't take the promotion. So they're like, we'll take care of ourselves. And come to find out, they couldn't stay up long enough to cook. And so multiple things ended up happening. And so finally, once we kind of peeled the onion back, we found, a couple of resources. We found that, there were resources that were available that could help them out getting them to doctor's appointments, could get them meals, could get them to the pharmacy, et cetera. And once we stopped and took the time, we didn't go back. But about a year later, after I had left that department, found out that the couple ended up passing away. But they were a year later before all of that occurred. So we think we take some of these lift assists very lightly and just say, hey, we can pick them up, we can get them back, and we can get back in service and don't ever have to do anything else. But really, if we slow down, we can actually cut down on that call volume.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a good point. Like, especially with the elderly, because the elderly, they know, at least from what my perspective was, they know what's going to end up happening to them if they end up popping up on the radar too much. They'll end up in places with people taking care of them that they don't want to be, with people they don't want to be around. Like you said, they don't want to be a nuisance. And also they don't want to admit that they can't do the very things that they need to do to carry on their own lives. So sometimes it's getting adult protective services involves, not all the time, but sometimes it could just be as simple as contacting family members, moving rugs around. I remember one incident where I had a cardiac patient. As his wife was coming outside, she tripped and fell on a very thick rug on the way outside. So I ended up with two patients. And so I remember talking to him in the ER saying, hey, we need to go back out there at some point and evaluate y'all's carpet and stuff. It's just, y'all will just end up with more injuries and stuff. You don't want that. And it takes a little bit more time, but it prevent more injuries and it will prevent more work later on.
So, and I think it's important that we realize that, falls are the leading cause of injury and accidental death and premature placement in nursing homes with older adults. And
I think that's a really valid point, because then, Brad, I get into the question, if we just go and pick somebody up and don't take a look at some of those risk factors that you're talking about and look for that role of risk mitigation, is there any kind of, and this would be a good point in time to have Wes or Doug on here as well, is what kind of liability do we carry by not recognizing some of this stuff?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the liability is for us if we don't recognize this stuff, but if we're doing our due diligence, we should be able to see that when we go to these residences.
Well, and this is, going back to just the basics and, everybody and talking about EMS education, you're always used to the BSI scene safe. And that's the interesting part, because we talk about scene safety, so many times we think about, do we just walk in? Is it safe? But ultimately, it's something that we take a look at from the beginning all the way to the end. And, my thing is are those things within that environment that would create an unsafe, not just guns or weapons of any type or animals, but are there other things that could cause us to fall? And if it causes us to fall, is it part of their issue as well? So, this is where we take a look, that we take 5 minutes, as Eric said just a minute ago, to move a carpet, and we keep somebody from falling and, fracturing, dislocating, or something of that nature.
Yeah. And, here's something else that I found in EMS, growing up in EMS, because I was 18 years old when I got in. Growing up in EMS, I realized how many people are on the spectrum of being a hoarder is way more than you think. Like, and when I say that, I'm not meaning that like they're piling up newspapers and trash and things like that, but I do think that people accumulate so much stuff in their houses that, like, it's not always the thick carpets that are told about in the textbooks and stuff. Sometimes it's 5 chairs in the living room, or the little boxes, boxes, trash cans, things like that are in the way. Like we think, like I don't think about it as an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old because I can parkour my way around stuff. Even if it's a 37-year-old, I can parkour my way around stuff. It's not a big deal. But, you got to think about your 65-year-olds, your 72-year-olds, your 80-year-olds who can't really get around that stuff. Not to mention people with injuries, who it might be a fresh injury. I've noticed this from working in pediatrics. Fresh injuries doth make big egos because they still think they can do stuff. Like they get used to those crutches, and it goes from being like little bitty ones to all of a sudden they're swinging like crazy and they're injuring themselves even more. So we have to be really careful that stuff that we take for granted, that somebody who's either injured, incapable, or medically cannot because they're on different medications may end up tripping over stuff. So just like little tripping hazards, things where it's like clear a path, something that simple. Firefighters I found are really good at that too.
So I just want to, put you on notice there, Eric. You're talking about those crutches there.
I know. Yeah.
I've done all kinds of stuff on crutches and usually ended up on my backside. And that was me as a high schooler. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's who I get my crutches to, little kiddos and high schoolers who are just like, I bet you I can jump up 10 stairs with this thing.
No, but you can, if you get good enough on them, you can actually just walk on them. Just pick your feet up. You can balance and do really great things. So not things that we need to be doing, folks. If your teenager's listening to this, it's not.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So I'm getting messages from my wife over here while we're doing this, talking about that's job security. And yes, we're not always, good. You're looking out. So, but you bring up a couple of good points, because I've been in a couple of these houses as well, Eric, that it was, not just, a small bit of hoarding, but like individuals that had magazines and newspapers stacked literally from floor to ceiling. And the only thing they had in their house was a walkway between their living room into the kitchen, back to the living room, into the bedroom and bathroom, and everything else had stuff. And when you take a look at that, if that house, was to catch on fire, there would be nothing that we could do to save those individuals, because there's so much fire load within that the entire house would be involved before we would ever get there. And if we did get in there, we wouldn't be able to find our way through because of the environment. So some of that, like in that situation, we were able to get the care for the patient and then get those individuals resources as well. And it's one of those things, and I think I keep going back to it, and Bradley, you do as well. And it's really that whole term of risk mitigation is the fact that, yes, we're going to spend some more time out there on this specific call. But by spending that extra few minutes now keeps, something more significant from occurring.
Yeah. And one of the things everybody always, talks about, well, there's nothing that says that if we go out and do this, it's really going to help anything. Well, I'm pretty big on research, and what I'm going to talk about, could actually be replicated with community paramedics, and you could do some research in your own community. So the University of the School of Medicine in Washington, in St. Louis, Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis actually tested the effectiveness of a fall prevention program. The study that they did was done with occupational therapists, but the whole part of this is patients all 65 years old and older and without dementia were put into two groups. So they were randomized. The experimental group received in-home visits from occupational therapists to assess, fall risk and create personalized plans to reduce those risks. Interventions for the experimental group included installation of grab bars, tub chairs, to make toileting, showering easier, safer. And a control group received, standard care like a review of medications, referral, and community services. I think I sent y'all a link to this, if we can put that in the show notes. But when you read through it and you look at the study participants in the experimental group, they still failed during the study period, but at a lower rate than participants in the control group. And if you read through the study, it says the annual rate of falls per person was 1.5 falls per person in the intervention group and 2.3 falls per person in the control group. So if you wanted to take that and put a cost with it, the average per person cost of intervention was $765, and per person declines in healthcare utilization were estimated between $1,613. So the intervention pays for itself, returning $2 of benefit for every $1 spent.
Well, you make a great point in the fact that this would be good with the movement for the mobile integrated healthcare, the community paramedicine, because, as the fireside, talking from the fireside, one of the things that we're big on is the fact that we want to get out into as many communities with as many smoke detectors as possible, because we know that the evidence has shown by having working smoke detectors throughout your house gives a greatest chance of survival for a fire victim. And so, how do we change that? When we take a look at these, obviously with cardiac or neurologic or, something like a diabetic, those are very difficult to, prevent in the short term, but something like this could. So it is the answer for EMS, taking a look at the healthcare side and saying, hey, one of the things that we can do is identify this population. We want to keep them active in the community, get them into community roles that will keep them active. But in the meantime, we can help them by making access to. Now, on the fire side, there's organizations or manufacturers of smoke detectors that will give discounts to fire departments that want to provide those smoke detectors. Is this a partnership that we can say, hey, to the building community or the manufacturing community of some of these things that you mentioned, the bars and such, and say, hey, we're going to go into our community and provide this as a service, but we're not able to do that without something. And say, hey, with this partnership, if you provide it to us, we'll provide these and install these for the client or the citizen, and we'll have a much better response. Our population will ultimately go to the hospital less, be healthier, and it ends up helping the whole community.
Yeah, and if we partner together to do that, I mean, there's no reason that if they're going out to install one that you couldn't work with, if it happens to be the same agency, scheduling one of the mobile integrated healthcare to go out with them. And if it's not the same agency, contacting the agency that has that to do it at the same time. The other part of that is partnering with your hospital, because if a patient goes to the hospital by ambulance or by a private vehicle after a fall, those are candidates for fall hazard mitigation, because a lot of them are going to return home to the same environment where they fell. And if that hospital partners with that agency and says, hey, we're discharging Miss Smith, who fell, and we've had her in the hospital for a couple of days because she was injured, there's probably even a more urgent need, because as Eric mentioned a while ago, they're discharged with new mobility limitations. So at first they may have those crutches or a new walker. And then as they get more confident, now they're taking more risk. And their risk in their home that made them fall the first time has not been mitigated.
And this is, as we take a look at the changes in insurance payments and trying to prevent those readmits, that's a perfect opportunity to get in there. And the big question is, there's a lot of people that kind of have the conversation about mobile integrated healthcare moving into the realm of home health. Well, there's a lot of times where these individuals don't have those home health meet those home health requirements, so they don't have that. And this would be I think an excellent aspect to, again, it's not something that's terribly difficult as far as installation. You can provide the training on most of this stuff about how to secure these into the home. I do know that there will probably be some attorneys in the conversation first, because how about it, if we install these and they don't work and they end up getting hurt So there's definitely going to have to go through the legal side to get the paperwork complete. But train those individuals how to identify some of this stuff. But I'm also thinking about it a little bit more and kind of creating that community coalition where not only do we have us, but we also work with social workers or others that can come in and do even further assessment to say, hey, with these limitations, you're not able to get into anything on these top shelves of these cabinets or even dip low enough to get to the bottom shelves. And so how can we manipulate some of this stuff? Do you have a multi-story house and you're not able to go from floor to floor? So I think that could actually come into, really making this a community project and saying, hey, what all resources do we have to make this happen? So in the message, and one of the things that we'll put in the show notes as well is you put in send us another link as well that come from the Center National Council on Aging, talking about Fall Prevention Awareness Week for professionals. And so this is something that not necessarily driven towards the patient, but about the community and how to create resources that are available for some of these patients. So, a lot of times we end up taking these patients back out from the hospital back to their homes. And in that, we can, simply reach out and have some of this stuff available as there's a fall prevention toolkit, stuff that can be done to remain active into the community. So as we take a look at a very short episode this week, but I think a very valuable topic in the fact that, the lifting assist patient sounds like something that's very quick. You walk out, you pick them up, you put them in bed, you put them in their chair, do the paperwork, leave, and you're done. But, my parting conversation for this is, take a little bit longer. See what is going on, because your eye may identify something that is going to prevent these individuals from being re-injured at some point in the future. And it may be taking about 5 minutes to educate them. It may be helping them get some resources out to them. But ultimately, just taking that a couple extra minutes, one, you make their day a little bit better. Two, ultimately, you have the potential to make their life a lot better, as making a lot more stable for them to be there. So any final conversation from you today, Eric?
Yeah, just, this is an excellent time for you to impart some of the wisdom and experience that you get onto your patients. And they'll thank you fully for it. So if you get a chance, if you're like walking through the house, you're just like, hey, I know they're probably going to slip and fall that, or maybe tell them, hey, that railing system that you have outside that's moving around, that's a little too wobbly, you need to get somebody to come and take a look at it or something. It's little things like that that may make make their day and make their life way easier.
And just as a responder, know what resources are out there or available. But if you're also one of the admin personnel, have those conversations within your community and see what resources you do have for those vulnerable populations. So, Bradley, any last thoughts from you today?
Yeah, one of the things I would say is make fall prevention part of your geriatric patient assessment and treatment. Wrap it in there somehow.
Excellent. All right, guys. So we always like to end these episodes by letting you know we like to receive your feedback. So make sure and go by our website at emshandoff.com. You can find out all about us and how to reach us there. But make sure to go by and find our Facebook channel as well. One Handoff, posting regularly and interacting with each and every one of you. Got an expanding group on LinkedIn as well. Been some great conversations in that environment as well. So find us in any of those. And don't forget to go by Jim's and all of their platforms as well. You can find our audio podcast on the EMS Today by Jim's on Google, Apple, and Spotify, and our video version on YouTube. Just find us under the EMS Handoff. And lastly, make sure to go by the Pursuit Company and get your EMS Handoff gear. They have our long sleeve, short sleeve hoodies. They have the Keep Back podcast line, our most popular. Go to www.thepursuitco.com and click on shop and find us under affiliates. For all of us, my co-host Eric McCullough and Bradley Dean, we'd like to tell you, take care, stay safe, and always remember the value of your